Okay, my friends, welcome once again to another episode here of the Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A, where we take a fundamental approach to diet and exercise to help you be fit and live free. As always, I'm Matt Schifferly from the Red Delta Project, and today's episode is one of the cornerstones of that fundamental approach, which is the Eat to Satisfy method that we have here at RDP. Now, the reason why Eat to Satisfy works so well as a nutritional approach is because, one, it's entirely customizable to what you need individually. So you're not just following cookie cutter advice and crossing your fingers and hoping it's going to be good. Two, it's very flexible. So that way your diet can adapt and change according to your circumstances. So you could be relatively sedentary now, but then next summer start to decide you want to get into triathlon training. And because you're going to be outside more and doing all sorts of physical activity, your nutritional needs will change. So, of course, your diet should change. It's not going to have this imposition of a one-size-fits-all sort of approach when it comes to your circumstances. And three, the biggest reason why Eat to Satisfy works is because it takes the complete opposite approach of what other dietary approaches are in our fitness culture, which is not only extremely limiting to your true potential, but it's also just very much not the way we want to go about it. Because we've been fed this idea in our fitness culture and our diet culture in particular, that the best way to have a healthy diet is to identify unhealthy foods or foods that are bad for whatever reason. And then you just find some way to just not eat those or eat them as little as possible. And this isn't at all an idea that's without its merits, because yes, there are certainly a lot of correlations with things that are negative weight gain, disease, chronic diseases, the perpetual slower down of health issues and stuff that are also correlated with the consumption of certain foods, ultra processed foods, lots of sugars and fats and other things like that. So it's not an idea without merit. However, I don't like to base my decisions personally on correlation. I'd much rather go after causation. I want to do things that are actually good for me. And unfortunately, when we base a lot of our diet and exercise advice on a correlation, we're just basically kind of assuming that's the way we are, assuming that's what is best for us. Let me give you an example. Say we have the advice of you shouldn't drink alcohol, okay? Now, we can certainly pull up lots of studies about the detrimental effects of alcohol and the prevalence of alcoholism and the effects it has on our mind and our body and our lifestyle and so forth. And is it certainly an idea that you could totally abstain from alcohol? There's plenty of people who do it. I did it for many years myself. And is it terrible advice? No. But one, it's certainly not good advice for most people, because advice within our fitness culture only works if people are willing to follow it. And a lot of coaches will lament on that. They'll say things like, oh, it's great advice. This is a great diet. This is a great workout program. It's just people don't want to do it. Well, if people aren't willing to do it, then it's bad advice. Because the first level of any degree of success that we have when it comes to getting what we want is we need strategies that are relatively easy to follow through with. And if we're struggling to do that, they're not good strategies. It's that simple. There's a ton of things out there that look great on paper, but if it only looks good on paper but doesn't transfer over to practical application, it's not going to be very helpful then, is it? So that's one of the first things. The second thing that we have to recognize is that it takes a heck of a lot more to have a healthy diet than simply trying to limit or cut back certain foods. Okay, so let's say you're looking at alcohol again, and you say, all right, so I'm just not going to drink. Okay, all right. Now, that's one, assuming that you have a problem with drinking to begin with, that you're over consuming alcohol. If you're like drinking one alcoholic beverage a week or a couple on a Friday night, it's not really that big of an influence. So totally abstaining from alcohol is probably not going to do very much. So a lot of times the advice that we have in our fitness culture of don't consume this food or this type of product or ingredient, they're basically assuming what your dietary habits already are and that you're already over consuming them. and that you're already consuming them in an unhealthy way. That's a lot of assumptions to base a dietary approach off of. And one of the things we learned about in nutrition class and exercise science class in college is you never base your specific recommendations on assumptions. You don't have someone come into your office and say, Mary, what are you doing? Well, I'd like to feel better and lose weight. Okay, then you need to stop eating wheat, kick out the dairy, and you need to stop drinking the alcohol, and you need to run more. I mean, I'm guessing as what she would really need. But unfortunately, that's exactly what happens much of the time in our fitness culture when we follow these cookie cutter diet or even exercise programs that are not based on a clear, straightforward objective. And that's what a fundamental approach gives you, is an objective-based approach to diet and exercise. This is what you're trying to accomplish. This is the thing you're trying to do with your dietary choices. And unfortunately, that is woefully lacking in our dietary culture, which is why most diets flat out suck. They're nothing more than a basic guessing game and based on assumptions of what you need. And I don't like to play that game. I would much rather go along with the approach where it's saying, this is what you actually need to accomplish in order to be successful to get the results you want. And then you have the power and the freedom and the discipline to eat what's best for you in order to achieve that. Because you're not going to be healthy and lose weight and everything just because you don't eat a lot of sugar or junk food. You're not going to be in the best shape of your life just because you don't eat McDonald's. Because there's a lot more to health and weight management and your well-being than just abstaining from a particular food group. And hell, usually there's a lot more to it than just diet even. So when you're looking at things that diets are based off of, let's say, seed oils are a big thing these days, right? Is that something that we want to look at? Absolutely. Is it really that much of a big influence on our diet? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on what you're eating and the context and how well you can use these things and your dietary needs and your requirements. And that's based on 100 other influences and stuff. So again, the recommendation of don't eat seed oils is basically a shot in the dark guess as to what you need. And is that alone enough to ensure that you have a truly healthy diet? No, it's largely inadequate because there's a lot more that we need to consider. There's a lot more that we need to take a look at. But when you have such a narrow focus into that one thing, you're essentially putting all of your eggs in one proverbial basket and ignoring hundreds or countless other influences that are also extremely important. So I always use the analogy. It's kind of like saying, all right, so we've got a football team. All right, what are we going to do to win? Well, we just got to guard and defend against that one player over there. What about the other players on the team? Don't worry about them. Ignore them. Don't worry. That guy right there, he's real good. So we've just got to stop that one guy. But the rest of the team, don't worry about it. And it can be effective in the short term. Yeah, it can be something that can produce some initially good results. You're losing weight. You're feeling better. Energy levels going up. Yeah, that's all good. But then, of course, there's adaptation. There's repercussions to that. And the team would figure out, oh, they're only guarding against Charlie over there. Oh, well, we'll just give the ball over to Jim and he'll keep scoring because they're not guarding Jim. Same thing happens with diet. When we put up our guard against a particular food or ingredient, initially that causes some degree of restriction, which usually means we eat less, which is why we oftentimes initially start to lose weight. And we think, hey, it's working. But there's adaptation. There's physiological adaptation. There's mental adaptation. There's even social adaptation. You could say, oh, gee, I've never, thought about these, seed oils or sugar before or whatever. But before too long, you start noticing, hey, there's the, ice cream bars at the grocery store that are sugar-free. I never noticed those before, but great. Now I can eat as much of those as I want because, hey, they're sugar-free. So that means I can eat as much as I want and not gain weight because they don't have sugar to them or whatever. So there's always a period of adaptation, and the restrictions that we initially had start to erode and even disappear. And sometimes you can even reverse it. Back in the low-fat days, everybody was jumping on the low-fat bandwagon. And then, when low-carb came about, it's like everybody's eating all these low-carb foods and, we're still not getting healthier and stuff. It's like, yeah, because basically the food companies figured out how to make low-fat junk food. So now we were convincing ourselves that we can eat tons and tons of junk food, and we would probably have eaten more than we would have otherwise than if it was just standard cookies and ice cream and cakes and things like that. So it sets up a whole precedent of going in the wrong direction with these sorts of things. But the eat to satisfy approach is where we recognize what we're trying to do with a healthy diet, which is to satisfy our 4 fundamental appetites. And then you eat however you want or need to in order to make that happen. Because that's ultimately what ensures your diet is healthy, not whether or not it's got less than so many grams of carbs in it, or you're eating so many calories, or you're fasting between this time and that time and stuff like that. These guidelines and recommendations are just kind of, that guidelines and recommendations. They're not really hard, steady, fast rules that give you all that much control. But we love to defend against these things because in order for a diet to become kind of addictive, it doesn't need to actually give you control. It just needs to give you the feeling of control, the sense of control. Because as I said before, there's a heck of a lot more to your health and your weight and your performance than diet. There's a heck of a lot more to diet than just seed oils or sugar or fat or whatever. So whenever you're looking at one thing, you're inherently very limited in your approach. But that doesn't stop you from having a sense of control. So when you turn down those chocolate chip cookies at the holiday Christmas party and you have a smoothie instead or whatever, for whatever rule that you're following, it gives you a sense that you've accomplished something, that you've actually made something happen. But fundamentally, you probably didn't do anything. You didn't really make anything happen. It's like, well, I avoided the sugar in those cookies. I'm like, yeah, but those smoothies can have a ton of sugar to them. So you're basically taking fruits and vegetables and stuff and breaking it down, which basically takes that fibrous complex carbohydrate and breaks it down into sugar. Or you're adding juices to it and things like that. That's sugar there. Or, it's, processed food. Well, smoothie making is processing. That's what you're doing. You're breaking everything down. So fundamentally, you may not be doing all that much different from one thing to the other. So one of the most dangerous things that we can have in life, but especially within our fitness culture, is the false sense of control, because it causes us to follow rules and adhere to dogmas that make us feel like we're doing something when in reality we're not. And that not only prevents you from doing the things that you really should be doing to get what you want, but it also can lead you to kind of, again, take your hands off the proverbial wheel and think, oh, I'm perfectly fine and safe. And you end up basically going down the wrong road because you're not paying attention to what's actually happening. So let's jump into what we really do with applying this fundamental approach. And as always, ask your questions, diet, exercise, whatever you want to accomplish, whatever you want me to address, just ask a hey Matt in the comments field, and I'll be sure to answer that live here. So the goal of a eat to satisfy, of a fundamental approach to a healthy diet, is revolutionary for several reasons. The first, as I mentioned before, is we're not trying to restrict you. We're not trying to hold you back from anything. It's not about don't eat this food and don't eat that, and you can't eat your favorite candy or anything. It's instead recognizing that the ability for a healthy diet to be effective is to satisfy your 4 fundamental appetites. So appetite number 1 is just basic physiological hunger. This is a very important one to recognize because a lot of our ability to manage our weight and to be healthy when it comes to food is to eat in such a way that it satisfies our hunger relatively quickly. There was a mentor I listened to years and years ago, and he's like, listen, if you're trying to really just manage your weight as well as possible, or if you're trying to lose weight, you need some sort of dietary approach that's going to be pretty low in calories, that's going to help manage hunger as best as you can. So you don't feel too hungry, but you're still drastically reducing the amount of calories you're consuming. So hunger is extremely primal too. There are people out there where if they have enough of a level of hunger within them, they'll forego any other needs and appetites in order to satisfy hunger first. In nutrition class, we learned about studies that were done on, unfortunately, it's very unethical at the time. I mean, this was many years ago, but they were doing studies, starvation studies on prisoners of war and convicts and stuff. And they were recognizing what are the other appetites they have: social appetites, carnal appetites, the need for sex for convicts. They'd have conjugal visits and stuff like that. And they were really astounded that these men are in these prisons and they haven't seen their wife or girlfriend for weeks at a time. And the wife or girlfriend would come in and they'd be like, "Hey, hon," it's like, "Did you bring me anything to eat?" That's all they cared about, because their hunger drive was so incredibly powerful that it overrode any other appetites that they had. And this is certainly true with us, especially now in our modern food culture. We don't really deal that much with hunger these days. We can go several hours without eating. Maybe we'll go even the better part of a day without eating in many cases. But we usually don't go several days or a week or two without food. So our hunger satiety and the ability to withstand hunger is, well, relatively weak. It's something that we don't have a whole lot of strength to endure. So as soon as we start to feel even a little bit hungry, we're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm starving to death. I'm going to go order a large pizza with everything on it," sort of thing. So this is one of the reasons why we want to make sure that our diet is extremely satisfying to that drive of hunger. And there's lots of ways that you can do this. You'll hear all the time of dietary approaches saying like, "Oh, protein is very satiating, so therefore if you eat a lot of protein, that'll manage your hunger." Or same thing with fat. If you have a lot of fat. Well, I've done high protein, high fat things, and I was hungry all the time. It's like I just could not eat enough. And that's because when it comes to physiological hunger, but even psychological hunger, just the mental and emotional desire for food, we have much more than just, this one thing that's responsible to it. It's a very complex system. It takes a lot more than just having enough fat, or butter on your toast or something in order to manage hunger. There's many various things, which is, as we'll be exploring in a little bit, one of the reasons why an eat to satisfy approach is so good is because it has such a wide variety of foods and approach and methods that you can use. It's not going to limit you so much, because chances are very good that the bigger your limitations are to your diet, the more you're going to suffer some degree of chronic hunger, or at least cravings, even if you're eating other foods that are supposed to be satiating, to be supporting your appetite and regulating your hunger. Now, you can, of course, modulate and adapt to things. It's certainly true that when we change our diet, our bodies adapt to the diet. So we crave whatever we're eating, and we crave whatever we're not eating a little bit less, and what we're eating can satisfy us a little bit better. This is just simply physical adaptation to our nutritional environment. When you go on a very strict diet, your body just thinks, "Oh, I guess I don't have much carbohydrate in my environment. I'll have to make these physiological adaptations in order for you to survive as well as possible until the next growing season, when we can get fruits and vegetables and things like that." So when we're looking at the ability to satisfy hunger, we want to place that on a high pedestal. And there's a lot of messages in our fitness culture that say, "Oh, good to be hungry," and it's don't ever be terribly full and things like this. But the fact is that hunger is something we always want to be managing, at least to some degree. It's fine to be hungry. You don't need to necessarily have a lot of hunger in your system, but you don't need to eat to such a way that you have a tiny little bit of hunger and suddenly you need to go grab a sandwich or something. It's okay to be hungry, of course. But on the whole, we want to be managing our hunger. Let's get to a couple of questions here. Joseph Bello is coming in saying, "Hey, up. My problem is keeping weight on. I'm thin. Most I weigh is 150. I'm active at work on my feet all day. I do martial arts and some calisthenics. I need more calories." Yeah. So keep in mind too that our general size and build does have quite a bit to do with our body type as well. Like, some people are just going to be smaller and skinnier throughout life, and some people are just going to be bigger and more full. And that's largely a genetic thing, because some people are born as greyhounds and some people are bulldogs, on the ends of the spectrum. Of course, most of us are somewhere in the middle. But that doesn't negate the fact that, of course, we can change things around. Now, you remind me a lot of when I was a young kid. When I was 17, I got my first real job, and I was washing cars all day at a Volvo dealership. And it wasn't like I was washing cars with a pressure hose and things like that. It was mop, bucket, sponge, garden hose kind of work on my feet, crouching down, moving around 9 hours a day kind of thing. So I was physically active a lot more during that summer, and I just could not get enough to eat. Unfortunately, that was when I was adhering to a lot of my very restricted, calorie and fat restricted dietary approaches, which is not smart at all on my part. But I digress, because when you have a very physical job, you probably are going to need a lot more calories than you think. And also when it comes to, excuse me, had a frog in my throat all day. When it comes to your physical activities that you have, you also have a lot of calories going out with that. So usually in those cases, I'm always telling people, like, don't shun a lot of the high calorie dense foods, the quote junk foods that a lot of people say you should never eat: the pizza, the cheeseburgers, the grilled cheeses, hell, even ice cream, candy bars, things like that, just to get some calories in. And this is not at all out of step with what a lot of strong, healthy, and fit people do. Bodybuilders of the olden age would have regular, consumption of ice cream in their diets. If you look in some of the old annals of what they would recommend, they would say, yeah, get some ice cream, get some chocolate bars, keep some candy bars in your glove compartment of your car or something, just so you've got something that you can go with. Now, of course, is that your main diet staple? Of course not. It's just a supplement. Look at a Snickers bar the same way you would look at a protein shake. It's a supplement. It's not supposed to be your main proverbial meal. But when it comes to getting more calories in, that can be a good way to go about it. We vilify these foods because they're quick, cheap, and easy calorie sources, which most people trying to lose weight, that's not a good thing. But when you're trying to put on weight, that's exactly what you want. Follows up here saying, I eat a little bit of every kind of food and do not follow any special diet. So that's a good thing right there, because that's the other piece of advice I usually give people when they're struggling to put on weight or keep on weight. I'm like, don't follow any kind of diet unless you have to. Unless you have to because of a religious preference or a medical concern. Like, okay, I'm truly an actual celiac, like I can't have gluten. It's like, okay, well then there you go. You're going to have to manage that part of your diet. But if you don't need to have any restrictions in your diet, don't. It's only going to hold you back. And it's totally unnecessary too. That's the other thing, is people are like, is this a good diet? Is this a bad diet? I usually say it's unnecessary. And I sure as hell don't want to follow that type of advice that keeps me from eating some of my favorite foods. So if it's not desired and it's not required, there's no good reason to do it. Casper is coming on. Hey, Matt, in my 3 sets of pull-ups, I'm getting 10 reps, 6, and 4 reps. Can't seem to progress and get more than 4 in the last set following your backfilling strategy. Best regards from Denmark. Yeah, so what you want to do is look at the quality of your reps and try and make the reps better. So that 10 repetitions that you're doing, what's different about the 10th rep from the first one? Usually it's a range of motion thing. A second is also pay attention to when you're pulling up, are you pulling your shoulders down and back? That causes a lot of weakness with pull-ups. When your shoulders are up and hunched and you're pulling up like this, and you're slightly kyphotic, that's turning off a lot of your back muscles, including your lats to a large degree. So you want to have your shoulders down and back, like you're shoving your shoulder blades towards your tailbone when you pull up. And that's going to get your back to engage a lot more. Remember, you want to feel the muscle working. So the follow-up question I would ask you is, how much do you feel your back working? Or is it all in the arms? That could be a sign that your back is just simply not working as hard as it should, and you're leaving a lot of strength on the table. But yeah, whenever people are struggling with repetitions, I always say, go after the quality of the reps. Make your reps that you can do better. Don't try to do more reps. Try to do better reps. And then when you get those reps to be better, then you'll find the numbers increasing. Leroy the man is saying, hey, Matt, oh, how I wish I could eat intuitively, but since my goals is powerlifting, I find that I have to force feed myself to get stronger. If not, I get weaker. This has been my experience for 5 years now. So when we're looking at a caloric demand on a sport or something, we want to look at how much the food is actually impacting our performance. So when it comes to powerlifting, which is an interesting thing, is why does getting fatter make you stronger? This is something I've never understood about powerlifting. I've known powerlifters who will just say, just get bigger, Just get bigger any way you can. If you've got a beer gut, great, you're going to be stronger. And I've always scratched my head at this. I'm like, I have no idea how that's supposed to work, because fat around the belly doesn't make your pectoral muscles physiologically stronger. It's always been a bit of a mystery to me. Now, of course, yeah, you definitely want to eat plenty of good food to support a good body weight, and you want to also support your training, and that's usually where the strength is coming from. Not so much body size, but the caloric consumption to support the training that you're doing. So my advice to you would be, make sure that you're eating in such a way that you have as much energy as possible for your workouts, because it's more about what's impacting your workout than your actual weight. And I'm assuming that's kind of the direction you're going with this. Of course, again, here I go based on assumptions and stuff. I made a short little video on the YouTube channel the other day, basically said, if you're ever wondering, will this thing help me build muscle and strength? Will this thing make me stronger? Always ask, does that thing improve your workout? Because fundamentally, the main driver of your ability to build muscle and strength comes from the mechanical resistance and the stimulus you create in your workout. It's not diet. It's not sleep. It's how diet and sleep and, headphones and music and everything impacts your ability to do your workout. So I would look at your diet more from the sake of, how do I eat to feel the best in my workout? And if you go from that approach, you may find that some of the stuff that you're eating isn't helping your workout, and it probably isn't doing that much for your actual strength. But some foods may make you feel stronger than others, so you want to double down on those versus just how much am I eating as a whole. One more before we jump in here to our second appetite. Christopher saying, hey Matt, I've been doing high reps of assisted pistol squats, 25 to 30, very good. I'm starting to feel light knee, I'm guessing you're saying light knee pain the past month, so I stopped. What is it causing the pain? What should I do to change? Take a look at your technique and your tension control as always there. Be very wary of your body position and your knee alignment, especially as those reps get higher. Remember, technique goes to crap sooner or later if the reps get high enough. So what you want to be looking at is the leg that is stretched out in front of you, and make sure it's close to the squatting leg when you're squatting. So one of the things that chronically happens for a lot of people in pistol squats, because many people have trouble keeping good adequate amount of supportive tension in their hips when they get that low, because the muscles are stretched out like crazy. So what ends up happening is their hips start to tilt a little bit away from the squatting leg, and the leg that is extended in front of them starts to point out to the side, which is usually a sign of that. When that happens, your hips are no longer level. They're starting to tilt a little bit, and the alignment of your knee goes to the outside. So you start getting some more of the force going on to the inside of the knee rather than tracking directly over your patella and the patellar tendon, which should be tracking over your toes. So that's one of the reasons why I'm always a big fan of, if you're really pushing either the weight or the repetitions with single leg work, have a little bit of upper body assistance, just to kind of make sure stability is not the limiting factor in your ability to do the exercise. Because you want to have really good alignment with these exercises. And pistol squats are really hard to do that because of that ability to keep your hips engaged and tight in the bottom. Okay, so we have fundamental appetite number one, hunger. We've got to eat to satisfy our hunger. And usually this means having a very wide variety in the diet, not a restricted approach, lots of whole foods, and pay attention to what foods just seem to satisfy you more than others. Do you feel like your hunger is more satisfied if you eat different sources of carbohydrate or protein? If you eat chicken and rice, are you hungry an hour later, or are you feeling pretty good? Pay attention to these things. Your body will tell you what is more satisfying, and you can learn from that experience. Second fundamental appetite is, of course, the need for nutritional support. We can't get away from that one, folks. We need our vitamins and minerals and macronutrients, water and phytochemicals and antioxidants and all these other sorts of things. So, of course, we want a high nutrient profile for our diet. And rightfully so. This is where a lot of people will lambast the processed foods and the foods that have less nutritional content, the quote empty calories, which is technically not even true because calories in of themselves have value. But the point is we want to have foods that are nutritionally dense. And this is where the quote healthy foods are, the things that have a good amount of nutrients for the amount of calories that they supply. Now, that doesn't mean that's all you have to eat. If you have a really good nutrient dense diet and you treat yourself to a Snickers bar and a soda on a Friday afternoon, that's not going to ruin your diet because your diet was fine before. It's still fine. It doesn't like negate anything. It's not like it, takes points off the boards or anything when you have something that you treat yourself with. So you want to be looking at foods, what has the best nutritional profile to it. And one of the most overlooked ways of doing this is not only just high quality, nutrient dense foods, but a variety of foods. Variety is going to give you more of a nutritional bandwidth than if you have just plain white toast, for example. This is a big lesson that they really follow in Japan, is they just have a lot of different foodstuffs when they sit down to a meal. It's not like they're just going to have jalapeno peppers or a bagel with cream cheese and call that breakfast. It's one of the things that they're like, okay, what can I have? Well, I got fish and I've got miso and I've got seaweed and I've got some fruit and I've got green tea. You look at that type of meal and you've got a much broader nutritional bandwidth of what it's bringing to the table, literally and figuratively, but you're also just getting so much more variety of nutritional sources. So yes, go after the nutrient dense foods, but look for variety too. Every time I'm making a pizza, I'm like, what can I put on this thing? I go in my fridge, I'm like, I'm going to put everything I can on this. I got peppers, I got onions, I've got hot peppers, I've got basil, I've got garlic, I've got olive oil, I've got all these things. It's like, whatever I can put on this thing, I'm putting on it, because anything I add to it is going to boost up the nutrition profile versus if it was just a plain cheese pizza. So that's a second fundamental appetite. We got hunger and we got nutritional need. We've got two more to cover here in just a second, but let me get to some more questions. Excuse me. Bumpy Knuckles saying, hey Matt, I eat before sleeping. You think that's good or bad, or doesn't matter for strength, endurance, and overall health? Yeah, it probably doesn't matter very much. I grew up very much in the era where food timing was very, very big. I myself was one of those, oh, you don't want to eat before going to bed. It's all going to turn to fat. And no, you've got to make sure you eat before your workout. And you got to make sure you eat after your workout. And you got to eat during your workout. And you got to eat like 8 meals a day. And, I was going after this type of advice because it worked really well for me. And like many greenhorn coaches at the time, we typically think that any type of approach or advice that works for us is just good advice, not recognizing that people are different. Some people are going to be better off with that type of advice. Some people are going to be worse off. And as a good coach, I should have been recognizing where things were. I always tell coaches, like, give me a rule, when it comes to diet or exercise that you give everybody. And like, oh, this is the best exercise and this is the way to eat and everything. Like, okay, so when is that rule a bad idea? Like, when is that exercise a bad exercise to give to someone? And it's a neat little exercise or drill to give a coach to see how much they've kind of drank their own proverbial Kool-Aid. Because a good coach should be able to tell you, oh yeah, I love kettlebell swings. Well, when is it a bad exercise? Well, in this scenario, this person, that person should definitely not be doing swings. This over here, we want to know where the exceptions are to every rule, because there always are. There's always exceptions. Go to your friend who's a diehard, ovo-lacto vegan and stuff, and ask them, when is a vegan diet a bad diet for someone to follow? And watch their head spin. Now, if they're really up on their nutrition game, they should be able to give you an answer. I'm like, oh yeah, I'd be a terrible diet for a person in this scenario or this kind of person or whatever. But a lot of times that doesn't exist because we don't have that much of a wherewithal. We're so much more aware of just our own little bubble that we've created for ourselves, our own range of experience that we have at the end of our own hand. We don't understand what we can go beyond with that sort of thing. But once you do, you become a heck of a lot better coach. And that's one of the things that you want to be looking at when it's about, meal timing. Go with what feels good for you. When I was in high school, if you remember that scene from The Breakfast Club where Emilio Estevez's character, they're all eating lunch and he has the paper grocery bag and he pulls out like 3 sandwiches and cookies and a banana and an apple and 2 like sodas and everything. That was exactly me in high school. Literally, I had the brown grocery bag. I had like 3 sandwiches. I had a good, several thousand calories that I'd bring to school every day. And so I wouldn't eat anything until lunch break, in which case, by that point, if I've gone several hours, I'm absolutely starving. I'm famished. My energy level and my concentration in school is just absolutely cratered. And then I would eat all of that food, and then I would be slow and sluggish for the rest of the afternoon because I just ate all of that food. I want to go take a nap. So then ultimately I figured out, if you just graze on this food throughout the day, you go to the locker, pick up your math book and a sandwich, and then an hour and a half later, you pick up your other textbook and you get an apple and a granola bar, and you do that throughout the day. Man, I felt amazing doing that. That was way better for me. So that's what you're looking for. Does eating before bed help you sleep? Does eating before bed help you wake up in the morning because you're not like ravenously hungry? Does eating before bed just feel good? It's a pleasurable thing. Are you getting a positive experience out of it? Is basically what I'm saying. If you're getting a very positive experience out of it, it's got to be a good idea. But if you're getting negative experience, like I get indigestion, I wake up with heartburn and all this, that's probably not the best thing to be following with that sort of thing. All right, so we've got our first 2 fundamental appetites, hunger and nutritional support. Number 3 is the need for metabolic support. And I always mention this one because a lot of times when people go on some sort of a dietary approach, they'll be the first to tell me how great it's going. And then at the same time, right afterwards, start complaining about how crappy they feel, particularly when they're working out. And me being in the endurance field, with mountain biking and everything like that, they're like, oh, this is the best diet in the world. I feel everything's going great. It's amazing and stuff. But boy, I ride more than 5 miles on a mountain bike and I bonk super hard. I feel terrible. I just can't seem to recover from a hard ride like I used to, kind of thing. And again, we're looking for that positive feedback loop. So when I talk about metabolic support, I'm talking about, is it making you feel good? Your energy level? Is it helping you recover from your workouts? Is it something that's making you feel like you can really handle a lot more work when it comes to your workloads, not just in the gym, but in life in general? Or like me, when I was in high school and I would eat a whole lot and then I'd be like slow and sluggish. And this goes far beyond what are you eating, but also how are you eating? Are you eating a big, heavy lunch and then you feel slow and sluggish? Or do you have a nice side salad and then an afternoon snack and you feel like your energy level and focus at the workday is just constant throughout the whole day? Those are the things you want to pay attention to. Because ultimately, remember that when it comes to this whole diet and exercise thing, it should make you feel good. Full stop. It shouldn't be one of these things where you're saying, well, I'm losing the weight or, I'm looking my best or whatever, but man, I am so slow and sluggish. I'm just not feeling my best these days. It's usually a sign it's not going the way you want it to. So when you're looking at metabolic support, you want things that are promoting a good energy level. You want things that are making you just essentially feel good. Do you have energy in your workouts? Are you recovering very well? Do you feel like when you get up the next day that your body is able to kind of rebound off of your workouts and maybe just be a little sore and stiff? Or do you feel like you just can't seem to recover? These are things to ask yourself, because a good, healthy diet should be supporting your energy levels, your ability to do the things that you want to do. So once again, pay attention to what foods are doing that. How much are you eating? Because if you don't eat enough, you're going to be slow and sluggish and have trouble recovering. If you're eating far too much, you might feel slow and sluggish and maybe recovery would be compromised. Who knows? But you want to be paying attention to your energy level and how sharp your mind is with various things. And go beyond the honeymoon period for workouts or for new diets as well, because everyone feels amazing on whatever new diet they're following. The first couple of weeks when they're in the honeymoon phase, especially if they've been over consuming something and then they cut back on it, they're like, oh my gosh, I feel amazing. I feel great. I feel wonderful. This new diet is great. Okay, yeah, great. But it's only been 5 weeks. Let's see how it is in 5 months, because things start to get real once your body adapts to the diet. And then you want to be paying attention to how it makes you feel. And that's what's going to give you a little bit more of a positive feedback loop. All right. Let's see here. Christopher is coming on with another question. Familiar with Starting Strength, Mark Ripito? I haven't read it myself, but I used to train with a guy who was a big fan of it. They advise that if you have reached a plateau, you need to increase how much you eat, but it makes me feel sick to eat so much. Thoughts on that? Yeah, that advice is just guesswork. Anytime someone's basing, like I said earlier, anytime someone's giving you nutritional advice and they don't know what your diet is now, they are guessing. They are guessing. That's flat out the reality of it. Eat 500 more calories. What's my diet like now? I don't know. It's kind of like me giving you just random instructions without knowing your actual place and location on a map. I need to get to the airport. Oh, turn left. How do you know that? I don't know. I'm just saying turn left. It's literally that. It's just guesswork. Here's the thing about the fundamental of diet and nutrition that everyone misses. Food is only beneficial if you can use it. If you can use a Snickers bar, it's healthy. It's going to be beneficial. If you consume it and your body's like, I could totally use this. Thank you. Great. Because I'm hiking up a 14er or something. It's healthy. But if you consume it and your body's like, I've already got enough, dude, for the love of God, stop eating. It's not going to help you. Why would it? Why would it? It's 10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife. Why are 20,000 spoons going to help you? Food does not have perpetual benefit to it. Nothing does. That's not how food works. So yeah, by all means, I always encourage people, if they're like, I don't know, maybe if I should eat more, if that would help me and stuff. Yeah, sure, go for it. Get a protein shake, have a sandwich, during the workday or something. If eating more is going to make a difference, it's not going to take a whole nother meal. It's just a few hundred extra calories should make a dent in something. And again, you're looking for very strong positive feedback loop. I was talking to a guy one time in the gym, and he was saying, oh my gosh, I started doing a protein shake after my workouts. Holy smokes, was that a game changer? Oh my gosh, I'm recovering twice as fast. I feel amazing. I'm building muscle. This is like the biggest thing ever. That's the kind of feedback you're looking for. But my friend, if you're like, I'm eating more and I feel sick, that's not going to help you. It's not going to be on the right track. Because keep in mind, there's a lot of variables that come into play when it comes to your ability to build muscle and strength. A lot of variables. Anytime someone's giving you just a random variable, again, they're guessing. They're just flat out guessing about what you need. And a lot of times that guesswork is not without its merits, because it's like, well, my experience, most of the time, if someone's struggling with this is usually the culprit. But don't assume at all times. But that's all you can do when you read a book. My books are the same way. I'm assuming this is kind of the direction you need to head into. But trust your experience over my advice, because your experience is a hell of a lot more accurate than anything you're going to read in a book. Super Prime 117. How's it going? Hey, Matt, when it comes to power tempo training that we talked about last week, can you do it through things like bounce squats or reactive plyometrics? That's a totally different type of training. It is just what you're doing. Like I said, the plyometrics, the bounce squats, you're using the stretch reflex to provide the power. You're not necessarily using the actual power in the musculature contraction. So I know it looks very similar. It even may feel very similar, but it's actually fundamentally a different type of training, which isn't bad. It's just you're trying to hammer in a nail with a screwdriver. It's like, well, I'm kind of like a hammer kind of thing. It's like, it's a different tool. It's the power tempo training is you come down, you have control, you're killing off momentum. You don't want that stretch reflex, bang, and you go and you power up almost entirely out of your muscular contraction versus, bouncing out and plyometric and stuff like that. That's not nearly as much in the muscles. So different type of training there, my friend. All right. And the fourth fundamental appetite that we want to pay attention to is what I call hedonistic support. I've tried to figure out different ways to name this thing over the years, but basically you want food to still be satisfying the pleasurable aspects of food that are ingrained in just society. The folks out there who are saying like food is just fuel and all that sort of thing. It's like, yeah, sure. If you want to have a crappy diet, because like it or not, no matter how we approach food, it does serve purposes for emotional support, enjoyment, pleasure, taste, texture, social support as well. I've talked to people before when they're like, I can't stay on my diet when I go on business trips because we're all chumming it up and they all order steak and fries and they're all drinking beer. And I feel like the odd man out because, I'm eating rabbit food, just the salad and water. And I feel like I'm a little outcast. And sometimes I'll even say like, what the hell's wrong with you? Can't you live for once? What do you want to live forever? Food provides much more than just nutritional sustenance to our body. And as such, we need to recognize that role it plays in our social settings, in our enjoyment, in the hedonistic pursuits we have in life. And these are often, again, very vilified in our fitness cultures being a bad thing. And they're not. They're extremely good. They're very, very healthy as long as we don't take them to extremes. Now, here's the genius behind the four fundamental appetites is we've got hunger, we've got nutritional support, we've got metabolic support, and hedonistic support. Now, the more you pursue one of those or two of those, the more you're going to compromise the others. And this is very important because a truly healthy diet will satisfy all four of those appetites most of the time. Yeah, sure. Sometimes you're going to have times where you're like, that steak really wasn't what I wanted to eat right now. I really would have enjoyed it if it was not quite as cooked or something like that. So sometimes we do miss the mark a bit on satisfying these appetites. But the bottom line is when you go after all four, then you have this framework where each one's going to keep the others in check. So I got to satisfy my hunger. Absolutely. Now, if you have a wider variety of foods that are more nutrient dense, that's probably going to be very helpful for that. If you have food that you're going to very much enjoy and get a lot of flavor out of, that's going to help with that. And if you have things that are going to make you feel good, that's going to help with that as well. But if your goal is purely how many calories you're consuming, I just got to eat lots and lots of calories, and you're eating nothing but pizza and junk food and everything like that, what's your nutritional support going to be like? It's going to be compromised. What's your metabolic support going to be like? It's going to be compromised. What's your hedonistic approach is going to be? It might sound like, oh, that'd be great if I'm eating nothing but junk food. Yeah, really? You ever see those challenges where people are like, can you eat this huge, massive pizza? And then afterwards, people are like, I don't ever want to look at pizza ever again, kind of thing. I really could use a salad right now. It's going to be compromised. So the more we ignore or outright pursue just one of these appetites, then what ends up happening is we compromise the other. And of course, that's where an unhealthy diet comes from. And this is why a lot of times I'll tell people that someone who pursues a diet from purely a nutrition standpoint, so they're going after the nutritional support of things, but they don't care about anything else. It's like, if it tastes good, don't eat it kind of approaches, right? And they're struggling with cravings and hunger and stuff chronically. Well, I see that as being the same type of dietary approach as someone who's eating nothing but junk food, who's eating McDonald's and junk food every single day. And the thought of eating some fresh fruit and vegetables would be totally foreign to them because they're going after that hedonistic, the hedonic support. That's what they're going after. And life is too short for rice cakes, the kind of attitudes, right? Both of those people, even though they seem very different, are actually fundamentally doing the same thing because they're pursuing exclusively one appetite at the expense of several others. And we're not going to have a healthy diet if we're starving ourselves in one way or the other. It doesn't really matter one way. It's like, well, I've got all the nutritional support I need. It's like, yeah, but you can't stop thinking about your mom's chocolate chip cookies during the entire party that we've been here. It's something that you're clearly not well fed. You're not satisfied. So it's compromising mind, body, or lifestyle. And a good, healthy approach to fitness should enhance mind, body, and lifestyle. So if it's compromised in any way, it's simply not a healthy approach to diet. So we've got to have some balance in there. And a lot of times the approaches that we use are not going to be flashy. They're not going to be extreme. They're not going to be the sort of things that, allows you to have an identity and practically a dietary approach where it's practically a religion or anything. It's going to be boring stuff. Have some fat, protein, and carbohydrate at each meal. Have some plants and proteins and eat enough, but not too much. Drink in moderation. If you want to drink, try and consume mostly low to 0 calorie things like water and stuff, and eat till you're satisfied but not full. And if you're a little hungry, that's okay. But if you're hungry, eat something. If you wake up at 2 a.m. and you're like, I'm starving, well, go eat something. These are types of advices that are not flashy. So they're not going to get a lot of play. I'm sure this podcast episode is not going to be a very well played one on my YouTube channel because most people don't want this type of advice. They don't want a healthy diet. Most people just want to be, how do I get abs? How do I get skinny? What's the extreme thing that I can do? What's a diet that I can do that's going to become an identity? What kind of diet can I adopt so that way I can look down my nose at everybody who's not doing the diet and I can feel self-righteous and superior to them? That's why we use food in such detrimental ways in our fitness culture these days, is we're not having a healthy diet. You can give me all the stuff you found in your internet echo chamber about how, carbs are killing you and all this and how you should be vegan and all that. I don't care, because if it's not satisfying your 4 fundamental appetites, it's not a healthy diet. Full stop. If you are, great. But also recognize that it's healthy for you. It's not healthy for everyone. I eat graze throughout the day. I eat all throughout the day, several small meals a day. Why? Because that's just what works better for me. Do I think it's the best way to go? Absolutely not. It's just what's better for me. If you're one of these individuals like, I love to eat once or twice a day, great. You just got to satisfy those appetites. That's all you need to do in order to have a healthy diet. And this is a skill. I can't give you hard, fast rules because that would be guessing, right? Oh, you've plateaued in strength. You just need to eat 500 more calories. Pure guess. You also need to shower later in the morning. You also should drive with your windows down. I don't know. I'm just going to make stuff up because apparently that's the way we're going about it these days. I'll just make up rules and hopefully something's going to happen and something good. And then you can be like, hey, Matt's a genius. Driving with the windows down was great. So when it comes to the ability to eat well, we want to satisfy those appetites. And you can use diets as a template, sure. Use paleo and keto and low carb and all this other sort of thing as a basic template, but don't be afraid to color outside the lines. I get questions and emails from people all the time going, okay, this is the program I'm on, but I want to make these changes. Great, go for it, make the changes. If your body or your mind, or you just have an inkling of like, I think I might be better off if I make this change, you probably are. I've been doing this paleo thing, but man, I don't know, white rice. It's just, I feel so much better when I eat white rice. I went out to sushi the other night and I had white rice and it felt amazing. Yeah, good, go. But the paleo guys, they'll make fun of me. Who cares? The goal is not to follow a diet. The goal is to be healthy. The goal is to actually get results. Do whatever you can or want in order to make that happen. One finger push-up saying, nice stepping up the video quality. Person turquoise waving. Thank you for recognizing. But also following up and asking, hey, Matt, what do you think about 5x5 workout, push, pull, squat 2 to 3 times a week and pushing last set to almost failure? Dude, you can't go wrong with that sort of thing. There are just some approaches and programs that just, how do you go wrong with it? 5x5 is just one of those classic things. Now, are there reasons why you would not do 5x5? 100 of them. Sure. But they should be pretty self-evident too. It's like, well, I've got to be able to do 100 consecutive push-ups. Well, Okay, then you're trying to do 1 by 100 kind of thing. But 5 by 5, pushing really hard towards the end, it's fantastic. It's just one of those things that just always produces. It's like a standard turkey on rye. It's a good, satisfying workout. It's just always going to work for you to some degree. And it's a good foundation to come back to. Now, be careful, though. You don't want to be like, okay, 2 to 3 times a week, this is my program. And then you basically marry that program. And someone's like, dude, let's try a challenge today and see if we can get 30 body weight rows, because that's one of the progression standards in convict conditioning. You're like, no way, man, I can only do 5 by 5. Now you've lost control. Now you don't have discipline, because you're putting the program in control. You're letting it dictate what you should be doing versus you objectively looking at your scenario and your circumstances and saying, what's best for me right here? But yeah, 5 by 5, fantastic. Push, pull, squat. Don't forget, folks, check out my push, pull, squat program. One of the simplest, most direct ways of building muscle and strength. It's a PDF down below in the RDP merch store. I think it's like $4 or something. It's dirt cheap. Maybe a little more than that. It's been forever since I've been on there. I need to re-look at that merch store to make sure there's nothing old in there. But push, pull, squat workout program. It's one of the most simple, basic ways to just get direct about building muscle and strength. And it's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of energy as well. And 5 by 5 is a great way to apply that as well. All right, folks, I am going to kick off. I got to go get some groceries. Got a potluck tomorrow. No idea what I'm going to be making as of yet. But you can bet it's probably going to have some protein in there, some plant. And, well, people will have their own portion sizes that they can deal with as well. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming on in. If you made it through this entire thing of letting me ramble on about an eat to satisfy approach and you apply it and are better off for it, congratulations. You are definitely in the minority, because I know my nutrition stuff is not even close to my most popular things, but it needs to be covered, because we can talk push-ups and 5 by 5s and calisthenics all day long. But man, if your diet is not satisfying your 4 fundamental appetites, good luck, because the diet is very important still for no matter what your objectives are. And it just helps you feel good, have a better quality of life. So I will talk to you folks next time. Direct your questions over at Red Delta Project's Instagram channel. And if you have any further questions, reddeltaproject@gmail.com. Talk to you then. Till then, be fit and live free.